Attention business owners. The show you are about to hear was recorded live in an Exit Success Lab professional development session. If you are a business owner and you're looking for a way to connect with people who are just like you, people who speak your language, people who understand your problems, Exit Success Lab is the place for you. You should apply to be a part of our community. You can do that by calling me directly. You can reach me at 786-436-1986. If you've been looking for a way to grow or scale your business, or you're just stuck, Exit Success Lab is the place for you. Call me today to see if you're a fit for our community. 786-436-1986. Call me today. The base level threshold is this $1 million to $5 million in annual revenue. Now, I'm not categorizing these companies by profit, by EBITDA. I'm categorizing them by revenue because revenue's easy. We all know what revenue is. I don't want to get into sellers' discretionary earnings. I don't want to get into how profitability is measured in all these businesses. Revenue is very easy to talk about. So 1 to 5 million in annual revenue. I've used the term Main Street Mavericks to describe these people. And the reason that I think they're Main Street Mavericks is because they've created a business to enable their freedom. My experience, the people who are able to push through, and by the way, that first hurdle is $1 million. And in order to push through that hurdle, they have to have come up with an idea that really resonates with a group of people who are their clients, and they've created this business for themselves to enable their freedom. That's what the business is all about for them. They need to develop trust in other people so that they can continue to grow. And what usually happens is the trust comes in the first key person they decide to hire, or the trust comes in the form of a partner that they decide to bring into the business or go into business with. And that's where it unlocks their strengths and they're able to pursue the things that they're really good at, while their first key hire or their partner is able to pursue their strengths and they're able to grow the business in that way. The challenge for these people is that realization that they cannot or should not do everything themselves. So that $1 to $5 million mark, they go up that spectrum by the more authority, the more capability they delegate out to other people, the deeper the trust they have in other people. These people are worthy of your investment because to get through that $1 million threshold, they trusted somebody at some point and they're willing to continue to grow and expand their business. And they will most likely be on an upward trajectory. And my experience is this is the fastest part of the cycle. Once they break through the $1 million barrier, going from 1 to 5 is the fastest part because they're like, oh, look, I can bring in a CFO and the CFO can help me manage to the numbers and I can realize where my profit is leaking and I can reduce the leakage of the profit and put that money back into the business and then bring in a salesperson or 2 salespeople or a sales team and reinvest that money back in the business as it continues to grow and expand. Harry, your thoughts on the $1 to $5 million area?
Yeah, no, I agree with everything you say. I think the one thing in the 1 to 5 you have to be a little cautious on is they're probably taking a lot of the profits and plowing it back in. I think a lot of people make mistakes about the people they hire, the systems that they put in place. So I think you always got to operate with, some level of caution and get to know your client. People do stumble, but I think that if you're growing with them at this pace, if you become a partner with them, then that's just going to do you're going to grow with them and you're going to do very well with them. So you can be more instrumental by making introductions for them that don't really relate to your business that could be helpful. So I think that's where you can get a lot of loyalty, down the road. But I think this is the part where people really build on their relationships. And I think that's just better, for the future, but you have to be willing to invest the time to do that.
The $1 to $5 million area is it's really liberating because it's like their first introduction to the drug of bringing in a team to help them, and they think because they've done everything themselves and they feel the weight of that, and pushing through the weight of doing everything themselves is what gets them over that $1 million hurdle. And then they bring in, usually it's that one key employee, right? In some cases, it's the salesperson. In some cases, it's an operations person to take the operations weight off of them so they can sell. And all of a sudden, when that weight is removed and they can leverage their strengths, that sense of freedom is what propels them forward. And it is exactly like a drug. And they're like, okay, this worked really well with sales. Now let me see what I can do with finance. Oh my gosh, I brought in a decent controller, and the controller showed me what we're doing here and how to be more efficient. That's more money. I can take that money and then hire more salespeople, or I can do more marketing, or I can do more advertising. And it's just fuel that continues to grow the business. So the mindset of that $1 to $5 million entrepreneur is the mindset of, like, you basically unleash the Kraken. You just release the beast, and they feel finally like they can move forward aggressively and quickly. The $5 to $10 million area, this is the valley of death. And I didn't coin that phrase, okay? That phrase has been told to me by no fewer than like 6 or 7 people who are in that area right now and who have been told that they're in the valley of death. And here's why this is categorized as the valley of death. It's because they try to take the people who got them to, say, 4 million or 5 million. They try and take those people and use those people to get them to 10 million. And the caliber of person to go from 5 to 10 is very, very different. To get to $5 million, you can be very tactical. You can be very action-oriented. You can be very hands-on, and you can get to $5 million as long as you buy into, hey, I bring people in to leverage my strengths. I can be a day-to-day manager, a day-to-day salesperson, a day-to-day person with my nose buried in the finances, and I can strong-arm the business to $5 million. But to go from 5 to 10, to scale that way, you need to be more strategic. And you got to take a step back, and you have to really start surrounding yourself with situational expertise. You got to surround yourself with people who are smarter than you. So to go from 1 to 5, and this is, I'll give you my experience, and I learned this with the ExecuStay brand at Marriott. To get from like 1 to 5, I had great tactical people. I had people who could make everything work on time. But to go from 5 to 10, I needed people who had to think differently, because working more hours was never going to be the answer. Salespeople who had to go after bigger clients. Salespeople who were smarter about the way they used leverage. They realized they couldn't cold call their way to $10 million. They had to do presentations, and they had to put on events to put hundreds of people in the room so that we could pitch to them all at the same time to go from 5 to 10 versus 1 to 5 where we could sell to them one at a time. So the people who get you to 5 are way different than the people who get you to 10. And you, as a professional servicing a business that's going from 5 to 10, need to realize that the advice you give to a business owner who wants to go to 10 needs to be more strategic and less tactical. You need to get them to hire the people to do the hands-on stuff and surround themselves with really smart people who have situational expertise. Harry, your thoughts?
No, I agree with that. You know, one of the issues you always have with clients when they do grow between the 5 and 10 million, a lot of times they will change advisors because of the brother-in-law or somebody else. I think that you need to be in a position to help them. And you got to be aware at the same time that they will just make changes. I mean, we had a situation where the client just says, well, we're evolving. I said, what the hell is evolving? In the relationship. So you got to be very careful about how you're seen. And if you just let them grow without being part of that team, you could be part of that evolving, aspect of it. But I think that the 5 to 10, I would agree. A lot of companies do fail because of a lot of bad implementation of systems, hanging on to the wrong people for too long of a time period, but not being able to identify that. And I think that's one of the big issues, what you call the valley of death, where a lot of people fail. The other thing too is in that area there, you're losing part of that entrepreneurial part, as you mentioned, Dave. And once you lose that part, your company's just different. And I think, especially in today's world, a lot of us dealing with AI and a bunch of other things, how do you invest? Because you don't necessarily have the knowledge to do the investing in those areas. You need to bring in other people who have that experience, whether it's somebody on your team or you hire a consultant to help you. And that's where, even in our field of accounting, that's why you're seeing a lot of the roll-ups, because you can't compete with it. It's just impossible. There's too much. So that's where you have to really focus in on.
So a couple of things to think about, to Harry's point, with you not getting thrown out with as they're changing the advisory team. If you're the person who's helping push them toward the change, you're less likely to be part of the change. This is the thing. You're either on the bus, driving the bus, or you're under the bus, right? So you don't want to be under the bus. My preference is always to be the guy driving the bus. So if I'm sitting with my client and I say to my client, how fast do you want to get to 10 million? And the client says 5 years. I say, why not 18 months? And they look at me. And there's a very famous story that's told about Peter Thiel, where he says, let me see your 5-year strategic plan. And they give him the 5-year strategic plan. And he looks at it. He goes, this is a great plan. You did a really good job on it. And the guy's really happy. He goes, now I want you to implement it in 18 months or you're fired. 5-year plan, implement it in 18 months. Your job as an advisor is to always be pointing your clients in the direction they need to go. You should always be taking your clients where they need to get to, because if you are, you're driving the bus, you're less likely to be under the bus when it goes by. I can't stress that enough. Harry made the point, I'm just emphasizing it. You have to be the person to help them go from 5 to 10. You're the tour guide taking them through the valley of death as fast as you possibly can. And you have to be comfortable politely challenging them. You have to challenge them and say to them, you told me you had this goal. You wanted to get to 10 million. You said 5 years. I told you could do it in 18 months. Let's talk about what it would take in order for you to do it in 18 months. And then you challenge them and ask them, in order to do it in 18 months, what's missing right now? Well, I'm missing this, I'm missing this, I'm missing this, and I'm missing this. Okay, who do you know that can help you get those 4 things in place? Let's get to work on it. Let me help you get to work on it. I don't care what your role is. If you're a lawyer, you're their insurance advisor, you work on real estate for them. If you tell them you want to help them get to 10 million, how are they going to say no to you? They're going to want you around because you're helping enable them to go from that $5 to $10 million mark. Now, one more thing about this, and Harry, I need your opinion on this as well. If they're in love with certain people and they don't want to abandon those people, maybe it's their son who's part of the business, or another relative, or someone that's been with them for 100 years. What you can do is you can share with them the educational opportunities that could bring that person along, maybe to make them better and make them into a potential $10 million person. The example I'll give you in this is a company that I worked for called Concord Hospitality. They had a general manager in Allentown, Pennsylvania, who was like a technology wonk. He always had the latest technology in his hotels. He was really into technology, would save up money from his budget to invest in the latest technology. The CEO of the company recognized this guy had an affinity for technology. He knew he couldn't afford a chief technology officer at that time in Concord's history. He invested in this guy, paid for him to go get a master's degree in something in technology, paid for him to learn about infrastructure and everything else, and he also invested in him going to every hospitality technology conference there was. 30 years later, this guy is now the chief technology officer for Concord Hospitality, which has like 190 hotels all over the US and Canada. And he's, by reputation, one of the best CTOs, chief technology officers, in the hospitality industry today. He didn't start out that way. He started out as just another general manager who had an interest in technology. They invested in him to make him the $10 million plus. Now he's the $100 million plus chief technology officer. So if your client has somebody who to them is personally indispensable, help them find an education path that could potentially make them a $10 million person. But make sure they understand that that education comes with the price, and the price is time. If that person is critical to the growth of the company, you may be better bringing in a steward for that role while this other guy apprentices for 4 or 5 years. Harry, your thoughts about that?
No, I think that's a great example. I think the other way you can do that in either, like let's say in the accounting or financial area, if you have someone who doesn't have the experience, we have seen people either bringing in other mentors that maybe that the family knows or the business knows, but you can also bring in on an interim basis CFOs to help train them over time, where you're dedicating a couple days a month to do that process. So I think you can attack what you're talking about in a couple different ways. You just have to be open to what's going to work best for the company and not drain all the cash and doing it in the meantime. So there's a lot of different ways to slice it, but I think that whole process of doing that. What you also get out of that, Dave, too, though, is the loyalty that is then going to be seen by everyone else by keeping those people and showing that you're willing to invest in people is huge from keeping your turnover down, and long-term people want to stay.
Some of those people are going to leave as you're growing, but I'm not a proponent of throwing them overboard just for the sake of saying, well, you're only a $5 million person and I got to go to 10 million, so I got to jettison you. I think you try to have to elevate everybody. You try to bring everybody along, but there are 3 or 4 key positions. And Harry, I'm curious as to your thoughts on this. For me, there are 3 or 4 key positions that accelerate growth. So strategically, the first one is in the finance space. I think you go from probably at 5 million, you go from a glorified bookkeeper to like a real finance person who knows what your books should look like, knows how to use the financial reporting in order to manage the business. And then at 10, you might even be able to go to a real CFO, correct?
No, that's about right. But again, in the meantime, you can also bring in people to assist in that process. The 3 areas of any company could be financial, operations, and sales, right?
Right.
That's the 3 that you got to get right.
Yeah.
And depending on what's going on. So it's a limited number of areas now, depending if you're in a regulatory environment, you might need legal more, but those are the 3 main areas you got to focus in on.
Yeah. So to Harry's point, one of the places that I worked had a commercial laundry. And during a recession when the dot-com bubble burst, like right around 2000, most of you weren't even born yet. Sheldon was born. But everybody else probably wasn't even, you weren't working at that time. But around 2000, we decided we were going to take laundry from other hotels and charge the other hotels, because we were one of the only hotels in our geographic area that had a functioning laundry. So the laundry became a profit center, but we were overwhelmed. We were working 7 days a week, 2 shifts, because we were doing our own hotel's laundry, but we had some capacity on the evening shift. So we were doing such a good job that we filled that second shift, And we thought we needed to buy more equipment to handle the capacity. And my boss at the time was smart enough to say, well, the equipment is going to cost basically like 2 whole years profit, and we probably won't be in a recession in 2 years. We don't even know if we'll continue to be doing outside laundry in 2 years. Maybe there's another way to do this. And we called a guy who all he did was consult with commercial laundries. His name was, at the time, was Charles Eiffel, and he was literally the guru of commercial laundries. And he, in 48 hours, transformed that business, made it an incredible profit center, and all he did was show us how adding a third shift, the expense of hiring and adding a third shift, could be easily offset in just 4 months by making that third shift at least 50% capacity 5 days a week. So we were absolutely able to, we got it to 100% capacity 5 days a week, and then eventually expanded it to 6 days a week. And it was an incredibly lucrative opportunity for us. But we didn't think of going to a third, it's a hotel, open 24 hours a day. We didn't think of running a laundry on a third shift in the hotel, because for the entire life of the hotel, they only had 1.5 shifts. They only had half the people on the second shift. That guy, bringing in that consultant, different thinking, $10 million plus thinking, completely transformed that entire business and made the hotel a ton of money from a department that was supposed to be an expense. After we experienced that, just FYI, the division that I worked in was responsible for housekeeping, laundry, and recreation. We had an indoor pool in New York, okay? We were one of the only hotels in our area to have an indoor pool. So we said to ourselves, shit, we brought in this outside guy who was really smart, had fresh eyes. If we do that with recreation, let's see what a consultant in the recreation space comes up with. And sure enough, we started selling memberships to our health club for the hotel and to the pool, okay? Indoor pool, retractable roof, great facility. And because the hotel wasn't busy, it was a freaking recession, we went nuts. And I had people going door to door selling memberships to this fancy hotel's health club. The recreation department went from being an expense to being a profit center. We had a consultant, a health club consultant, come in, brought us the entire operating procedure for a fraction of what we made in the long term. Again, we were $5 million thinking. These people are $10 million plus thinkers. That situational expertise, that's what breaks you out of the valley of death. Harry, your thoughts?
No, those are great examples, Dave. I mean, that's why you need to bring in those people. The issue you always have is finding those right people, because there's a lot of consultants out there. So that's going to be the real issue. You need to talk to someone else who really has worked with them to see how instrumental they have been. But those are things where you got to start thinking, how do you get to that next level and how did you break out? The other thing too is even people in business, we've had this with clients who have told me this, is going to talk to other people who have broken through it on their own, even if they're competitors. They a lot of times don't open up because they want to help you. Whatever the case may be. We had one where, a competitor told one of our clients, you need new trucks. You got to have new trucks because you'll make a lot more money because people are going to think it's another level of professionalism. And he did it, and things went very well after that. So, I would, it's you got to get the Stephen Jobs theory. People will give you good information if you're willing to ask, even if it's a competitor.
Yeah, no, that's great advice.